Hi, everyone. Welcome to Chasing the News Stone Cold Sober, Episode 8, The Right Stuff. Chasing the News is a monthly talk show that brings together high-profile men and women to share, sober men and women, to share how they are staying sane, sober, and connected during COVID-19 and beyond. My name is Ahbra Kaye, and I'm the producer of the Chasing the News Stone Cold Sober web series. I'm so delighted today to introduce our guests, Laura McCowan, blogger, podcaster, founder of the Luckiest Club and online recovery community, and best-selling author of We Are the Luckiest. I totally agree. The Surprising Magic of a Sober Life. And Amy Dresner, speaker, writer, co-host of the podcast Rehab Confidential, former comedian, and best-selling author of My Fair Junkie, a memoir of getting dirty and staying clean. Yeah, I don't know what the noise is. See, I don't have any idea. I'm sorry.
It's
Um,
okay. It just sounds like maybe you're in a little bit of a wind, but that's fine. We'll we'll just pretend we're outside.
Zoom. Like, if
Yeah,
it wasn't some sort of issue, it wouldn't be Zoom.
I
Um,
know.
so thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you
Uh,
for
Thank
having
you.
us.
no, it's just really exciting for me. Really happy to be here with you guys and talk more about what you do and about Laura, about your sober community, and Amy, how you both are involved in bringing recovery to a lot broader community, which is just wonderful. So tell me, how have you been keeping it together in COVID? Like, not a whole long story, but just, what is like the one thing that you had to bring in over the past year to stay physically and emotionally sober?
Amy, go for it.
I had to start meditating again. I just was losing my mind. The isolation in terms of, was really, really sort of amped up my depression to a whole new level. I also, I started a podcast, which was just to have something to do from home where I was connected to someone else, because writing is very lonely. It's a very solo thing. And it was fine when I would write from home and then I would go out to a meeting or go out to see my friends. But now I'm like writing from home. And then it's like me and Colonel Puff Puff, who's passed out on the couch right there. And I was like, oh, you know what I mean? So I did that. I quit vaping because I found it getting more and more out of control than ever. So I did that. And I also kind of just gave myself a little bit of grace. There was so much pressure on people to sort of like get 6 packs of abs and like write a new book. And like, you know what I mean? Like so much pressure, like, it's over for everyone when this is over. You know what I mean? Like to have a perfect body and have written your book and all that. And I was like, you know what? Like if I come out of this with my sobriety and my sanity and my health, I'm doing great. There was a lot of financial pressure. And so, and then Laura asked me to be part of TLC, which was life changing, honestly, for me. She started during the pandemic and she was like, hey, I want you to do, be your wild, crazy self on Friday nights. And I was like, be the Friday Night Live show. And I was like, okay. And it turned out to be a complete lifesaver, just being connected to all of these amazing women and some men on Friday nights and being, pulling topics and speakers and just connecting with people. And it was just a lot of fun. And it felt great. So that's kind of, I think we're both working on our second book right now, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a blast and a half.
Yeah. I uh it's so funny because it's hard to even remember this past year. It feels like such a weird blur. And there have been times that have felt like my day to day didn't change a ton, to be honest. I work from home anyway. I uh, am sort of an introvert, and but that said, I did realize how much I do rely on the social connections that I have, and the social time that I have. And my anxiety was the thing that got really bad. right when this hit. And it's been, I immediately, so you asked what we did. I immediately, once anxiety got that bad, changed my medication. Like I'm on antidepressants. I have been for a long time. And I, was not afraid to just bring that up and help myself out. And I really threw myself into work. I'm lucky that I work for myself so I could create new things. And I ended up creating someone asked what TLC is. It's the Luckiest Club. It's a sobriety support community. And we have like 25 meetings a week and it's really neat. So I did that. The grace part was huge. I've had to really surround myself with a lot of support, a coach, a therapist, like again, a various checkpoints that I put, with like built-in time that I see friends, even if it's online or walking, and just really like create structure so that I can stay just functioning, to be honest. I mean, even though my day-to-day life didn't change, everyone else's did. So that impacts a lot. And I think if you're someone who absorbs the energy of the world and is an empath, which most people who fall into addiction are, I think it's some crazy statistic, like 90 something percent. You just feel more. So those are all just things that I did. I wish I could say there was one thing or two things that really kept me afloat, but it's been more like this,
Yeah.
The lots of peaks and valleys. And the winter, that January, February time got really hard. Like this January, February, I mean, the world was in a weird place and felt like we had the worst COVID spike. It felt like we weren't getting out anytime soon. It was going to be winter forever. I live in the Northeast, so winter is hard anyway. Yeah. And now I feel, one thing I think it's important to talk about, and maybe we'll talk about this, is now we're sort of turning this corner where vaccines are happening, things are opening up. And so there's this new set of anxieties, this new layer of like, well, what does life look like now? Especially for people that got sober in the pandemic, which, how there is comfort in knowing that everything social is sort of shut down. So I know for me, I've had drinking dreams the past 3 weeks straight. And that's to me something that when I have them, like, what's going on? Like, what is in there that you're afraid of, or you're feeling out of control about?
Well, I think the world is pretty out of control. It seems to have calmed down now. So it's very easy to want to find those little things in your life that you can control. Sometimes that's positive, sometimes it's not so positive. You both mentioned your books, that you're writing new books. Is that something you started in COVID, or is it something that sort of just went faster because you were you didn't have much else to do?
Went faster? Right?
Able to dig in more because it was COVID.
No. Oh God, no. I mean, when you're in your house in your sweatpants, you're just like, I'm going to clean my refrigerator because I don't want to work on the book. You know what I mean? Like, right, Laura? You're just like, we both are I'm in a place where I'm working on the proposal. And so my agent, it was always a plan to write a second book. And for some reason during the pandemic, I don't know, people started where they were burnt out on Netflix, and I was on a couple of high profile podcasts, and the book got really, really popular and a lot of people discovered it. I think being part of Laura's crew helped. I was on the Skinny Confidential, and I think people were just like, I got to read. And a lot of people got sober during the pandemic. And so the book really became more popular than it had ever been. And I was like, oh, this is weird. And so, I started to kick around the second idea with my agent, wrote a basic proposal, wrote a first chapter. He gave me some notes. So now I'm polishing and reworking that. And I'm also in the process of selling a series, which is exciting but stressful. Everything feels exciting and stressful to me. And I had anxiety too. I'd never had anxiety before. And now I had to adjust meds too. I mean, I was having like weird like panic attacks and like out of nowhere from nothing.
Mhm.
Like, what are you panicked about? Just a wave of anxiety would come over me. And I was like, And the other thing that I took the time to do because LA had been so shut down, and because dating apps for me had been like a huge source of like a pitfall for my sex and love addiction, is that I started working with a romantic coach, a dating coach, and started doing all that internal work. I was like, if you're going to be in the house and be celibate and be by yourself, let's do the work that we're avoiding doing. So I started doing all this work, on childhood stuff and, being attracted to terrible people. And that she was sort of the one who was like, pushed me to meditate and that kind of stuff. And so I don't know, I'm kind of nervous of when I think it opens up and it's like, woohoo, dating. I was like, it's been like a while. So there was like a
Yeah.
safety in not doing that. You know what I mean? For
I think
myself.
it's that way for a lot of people.
Yeah, it
I
has
do.
been sort of. I want to talk to you, Laura, about when you say that drinking, you're talking to your brother and you say drinking is my thing.
Mhm.
It's my thing. And then of course you talk about how, or you write that someone's thing could be sex or shopping or anything, any sort of process or substance abuse behavior. But I was wondering when I read this, have you thought about someone's thing being that, self-concept, that negative self-concept, like your thing is self-pity or beating yourself up or, never being good enough, that's someone's thing?
Yeah.
Wondering what you're.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think our things are only addiction behaviors at all. I think they're anything that we wrap ourselves around and get stuck in, right? It can be unprocessed grief. It can be trauma that you haven't healed. It can be a divorce. And, we go through many things in our lives. There's never just one. For me, the alcohol was like the thing that had to be taken care of in order for me to even have a shot at living and in a way that I wanted to, or living at all. And then I learned about my other things. I learned about, you dig deeper, and there was food and my body and men and dating, and yes, being very tied up in what I produce as an identity. All these are things. Everyone has at least one thing, but we all have them, and we all know. We really know what they are, right? And what it is, what the next thing is. Like Ames just said, I realized I had to work on this dating thing, this romantic thing. That's my thing right now. So absolutely, it doesn't have to just be a substance or process addiction. It's whatever keeps us stuck.
Exactly, whatever keeps us stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So Amy, you wrote, I'd always known that anything worthwhile took time and effort, but I was afraid to do things I wasn't immediately good at. I was afraid to look foolish. I totally relate to that, but like, what did it take to walk through that fear?
Well, I mean, I don't play an instrument. And, I can't sing and I don't dance. And so, it's like the things that I'm not, it took, yeah. So I basically just realized that nobody is great at stuff at the beginning. I mean, being good, you've got to learn. I mean, that's something you learn with writing. It's like, let the first draft be crappy. You're going to do more polishes. Like if you're stuck on it being perfect in the beginning, you get really stuck because the creative part of you can't flow when the editor part is like, that's crap, like don't do that, like, you know what I mean? You've got to do a thing where you just like block out the editing and go through. I just was like, I started exercising with a trainer, and I was horrible because I'd been not exercising for, I mean, I would literally like, we do a balance exercise and it was via Zoom, and I would literally like fall out of the screen and we both just start laughing and laughing and laughing. And I think that as I got stronger and I got more, and I'd start to be able to hold balance and got better weights, and I was like, oh, okay, it showed me that I was allowed, that I could get better if I just was patient and allowed myself to be bad and didn't judge myself. I think that I'm really self-effacing. So I'm just like, who cares? Like, anyone who's great at something was crappy at the beginning and put time and effort into being good at something. That's the truth.
Including sobriety.
Yeah,
I
including
sucked
sobriety.
at it. Yeah.
And so, when Joe Schrank and I started a podcast, we had no idea what we were doing. We were like, this will be fun and easy. And it was like, it was like having a child together. I was like, oh my God, I'm connected to you forever. And this is horrible. We don't know how to do sound. And I was like, and like our first couple of episodes got trashed. And slowly we figured it out, like, okay, here's, we figured it all out. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I learned that from comedy too, from stand-up,
Yeah.
I'm also, it's like, the more I did it, the better I got. But I've always been attracted to things that I'm immediately kind of good at. That's just insecurity and ego.
That makes sense.
But I've been forced to sort of do stuff that I'm not good or comfortable in. And I'm like, okay, and so.
Yeah. Well, you realize that nothing much happens when you suck at something. Nothing much happens. You might be embarrassed, you might be shamed, you might be, but what you get, like, what's the alternative is how I look at it. You're just not going to try.
Yeah, if you want to get good at something, you've got to be bad first and practice, and learning. I mean, I think we both have learned a lot as we've gone along, and we look back and we're like, oh, why did I say that? Or why did I do that? And, like,
it's
Laura's
hard though, as an adult, to learn new things and admit that you don't know how to do things, especially that you feel like you should be able to do. I started to play volleyball. I played it in high school, but I started to play beach volleyball in the pandemic, actually, last summer. And I was terrible, like awful. And
Volleyball is really hard.
It is. And beach volleyball is really hard, but it was so funny and fascinating to watch myself suck so bad at something and just to still do it. It's humbling,
Yeah,
but I thought like, when do we learn new things as adults? Like I don't know.
That's kind of my next book, because was really, really developmentally delayed, having been an addict and sort of mentally ill for all those years. And then all of a sudden I'm like middle-aged, and, I make jokes about it all the time. I mean, it's like now I have to take care of my mom who has dementia. I can't cook. Like, I mean, I make jokes about it all the time because it's so mortifying. If I don't make jokes about it, I won't get through it. So, when they asked me, I hadn't had my oil change in like 7 years. The guy was like, when's the last time you had an oil change? I was like, I don't know, but I know how to make a crack bong out of a Mountain Dew bottle. And he was just like, what? And it was like, I have different skill sets from having been in addict. I'm like, I know the good psych wards, and I had to hit a rolling vein. And he was like, what? And he was like, it turned out he was sober, so it was fine. But I was like, I'm letting my friends teach me. And I'm 51 years old. How to do taxes, how to really clean my house, how to organize, how to budget, stuff I just didn't want to learn to do. You know what I mean? Refused to do, didn't want to grow up. It was
then you feel like you're too old to ask.
But I don't feel like I'm too old. I don't care.
No, I mean, you feel like you don't, but most people do. That's why you're awesome, because most people feel like they're supposed to know how to do something, or, and it relates to drinking too. It's like when we stopped drinking, I had this call today where someone's like, I don't even know myself. I'm an adult. I've been married for 16 years. I have a family. I have no idea who I am. And shouldn't I know this at this age? It's like, no, because when we drink, we don't know ourselves. Right. When we use, we don't know ourselves. And so sobriety, maybe it's the answer, Ahbra, is that sobriety really teaches you. I mean, you really have to learn to do life.
Yeah, and you have to grow up. That's what I've always said. Recovery is about growing up.
And what you talked about, both of you said, is giving yourself permission. That's what we do, or that's
suck.
To suck, but
to be bad and to ask for help and be like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, like, my place got sprayed for roaches. Hi, welcome to like being famous and rich. Okay. So, and, so all my entire kitchen and bathroom were in the living room. And I was so overwhelmed with the idea of putting it back. And so I was like, oh my God, my place is so dirty and clean. Cause I was raised with maids. I'm not proud of that. It was just, that's the way. And then I lost everything and swept the streets. And so I cleaned, and my friend came over who's OCD, and she goes, you think this is clean? And she ran like a Lysol wipe over, and she showed black. And I went, I did the best I could. I'm sorry. And she was like, she organized and put everything away. And I'm just like, thank you, thank you, thank you for not shaming me and for helping me walk through this and do it.
Both talking about the connection that we get in, I feel like I didn't get until I was in recovery. You know, I had family, I had a husband, not anymore, but I didn't have the kind of connection that I have here. And I'm just wondering, do you guys feel the same? Have you been able to forge any close emotional relationships through Zoom? You know, with the women you see or the men you see on Zoom, are you able to get that feeling?
I want to comment on what you said just before that, and then I'll answer that about having real connections in sobriety and not, I wouldn't say that I really did either, because nobody knew me. I wouldn't let anyone really know me. And so I feel like the reason that we are able to make connections in sobriety, there are many reasons, but I think at the heart of it is we're humbled enough that we have to be honest, or we don't survive it, right? And I had to be honest to get sober. And we're humbled, like we get to stop pretending like we're fine. We get that everything's okay. I think everyone is doing that. I think, like, in general, people used to be more connected to each other. We relied on family, we relied on community. It was understood that it takes a village, and we really lived more like that. And now it's we're so addicted to appearing like we're doing it all, and because we see other people appearing like they're doing it all, we feel like if we're not, there's something wrong with us. So it's like, it's just this, I think that everybody is dying of loneliness, and we get to have connections in sobriety because we have to open up. We have to admit that we're not all right. That's like it's for your price of entry is I couldn't even pretend like I was all right anymore. It's like the pieces are everywhere, and like, here it is. So, but that was what allowed me to have connections. And then, so I was lucky enough, when I came into this pandemic, that I had connections already. I had good relationships already. So I haven't had to see them and find them on Zoom. But yeah, I mean, I have a therapist that I only have ever worked with on Zoom. I have a coach that I've only ever worked with on Zoom. I have this whole community. I mean, Amy and I knew each other, but we didn't know each other until we started, till TLC. And so, yeah, I think you can totally, I mean, there's community that we see on in our meetings, and of hundreds of people, that people know each other, and we see pictures of them in real life. So I think it's totally possible. But I haven't had to rely on that as much, but I know for sure that people who, especially those who have gotten sober, have made real relationships and connections through Zoom, through online stuff in sobriety, in the pandemic.
I got a sponsee, she's in Massachusetts, and I know a lot of people who are sponsoring, across the country. I think it's pretty magical.
Yeah, that part's really cool. I spoke in South Africa yesterday morning. I was like, okay,
like,
how beautiful
That's
everyone
amazing.
is in South Africa. It was like the most beautiful women I've ever seen. I was like, oh my God, you know? And so like getting to speak in, in the UK, and getting to speak in, all these different places, in Scotland where you can't understand what anyone's saying. That's great. And, but it's like, it's amazing. So I think there's a weird connection, but for me, I really miss the physicality. I'm a very physical person. I need hugs. I need to touch people. I have very bad physical boundaries. People are like, please get off me. Don't stand so close to me. Don't hold my hand. You're creeping me out. So during, I mean, I wouldn't be able to be like creep on people's boundaries anyway during the pandemic, because everyone's, I got in trouble yesterday at Starbucks. I had like my arm on the thing with and they were like, please don't lean on the, and I was like, oh, it's very, very hard. Literally, I go up to there's a lesbian couple that are my best friends that live upstairs that are sober. And I'll go up there and be like, can I just get a hug, you guys? I mean, poor Colonel, I'm like holding his hand at night. He's like, I'm not your husband, I'm your cat. Like, what is your problem? And now just massage parlors have opened up. So it's like, I miss the physical connection, even of speaking, where you have a crowd and you can hear people laugh and you can see their faces. On Zoom now, I'm all tuned into everyone, like, who's laughing and who's looking at me, and like, like such a kid of an alcoholic, like reading, reading someone's face for their reaction. And I don't like that part. It's like,
But it's been the only choice we've had. So I think it's imperfect, but it's better than nothing.
No, it's much better than nothing, especially when you see people who have gotten sober, probably people who are getting up to a year,
Incredible. I mean, I can't imagine getting sober during the pandemic. I can't imagine that.
Not to have to worry about how to get alcohol or drugs or whatever. I mean, it was just so cool. And not to be home, trying to hide it from my daughter.
Yeah.
So have you guys started any, I want to know what you're watching. I don't know if either of you watch TV. I have two questions that are just like, sort of not one, are you doing more online shopping, and what is your favorite?
I'm so glad you want to talk about these things.
And what do you like watching on Netflix? Because I'm getting those.
Well,
go on.
The answer to the shopping part is yes. I have been doing a lot of online shopping the entire time. Just this morning, I did a huge shop on Madewell because it's spring and now I can, I want to buy shirts. And I mean, like a lot of people, home projects became a thing. And I also moved in November. So there's been a lot of shopping. Yes. Second, shows. I just started watching Making a Murder on Netflix.
Oh my God, you're so behind. Really?
I know I'm behind. I know.
How embarrassing. You just admitted that? Oh my God.
There might be other people. There might be other people out there who haven't seen it, like me. That is fascinating. I'm about halfway through.
Very.
I have another show that I just caught up on, and I think it just ended, but it's really funny. Mom.
Oh.
And oh my God. I didn't know. It's got a laugh track and everything, and it's funny. And also good. And it's about a woman in recovery. The last show that I got really into was Queen's Gambit, I think. And Yellowstone.
Loved Queen's Gambit. Amy?
I had a hard time with it, Queen's Gambit, though. The drinking was really hard to watch.
Yeah. I
loved Queen's Gambit. I hate chess and I never could understand it. My ex-husband tried to teach me chess and I was like, I'm too impulsive. I'm not someone who's like, I'm going to do this and this person's going to do that. Like, I wish I could be that person in life, but I'm not. I'm kind of just like, oops. Queen's Gambit was amazing. I found the smoking really triggering for me in Queen's Gambit. I was like, man, she makes smoking look cool. I miss it. What did I watch recently? I watched the Cecil Hotel documentary. And then we had Douglas Mungin, the Skid Row historian, on Rehab Confidential.
Oh, wow.
He was like talking about Skid Row and homelessness and like all this. And I was like, I want him. And I just hit him up on Instagram and he was like, oh my God, I'd love to. And then I screenshot it and sent it to what I thought was Joe and said, we got him. But I sent it to Douglas.
Oh, he probably loved that.
And I went, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I meant to send that to my partner. I'm so excited. I'm so sorry. And he went, haha, it's hilarious. Totally flattered. I do it all the time. So nice to see that someone else does that.
That's cute.
Just been doing, I love Ozark. I'm waiting for it to come back. I'm watching actually something called Vis-a-Vis, which is a women's prison show on Netflix,
Ooh.
which is really, really dark and amazing. Watch the Body Brokers thing because we did a show on body brokering, mostly like stuff for
Work.
research for work. Yeah. And then like I haven't really been, and then I'm thinking like I'm gonna work on the book. Let's work on the book, and we're not gonna
Oh, but
watch
there's so
shows.
much Netflix. Yeah.
And yeah, and it's like, I mean, yeah, Handmaid's Tale and like anything with murder I'm into, I'll love that stuff. I watched Crack, the documentary, and then we had Stanley Nelson on, like, yeah, if it has drugs or sex or violence in it, I'm like, meh, So, but shopping, there's no other way to buy stuff right now. A lot of stuff so it was like,
Favorite. What have you discovered that's exciting?
Oh,
huh?
wow. So much.
For me, it's Etsy.
Oh God, Etsy's amazing. You just discovered Etsy?
Oh no, but you can get in so much trouble.
Yeah.
You went down. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Etsy's incredible. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna bring.
And the Real and Vestiaire and eBay.
I just look and dream on the Real because I'm not.
I don't even know what the real is. I'm not going to look either. I don't need to know.
It's like really high end brand stuff that's pre-owned. And
No.
Vestiaire is the same, but you can get amazing deals, guys.
I'm sure.
Well,
I'm not going to do it.
Perhaps in the future we'll get sponsored by any one of those. Talk it up and just see if we can get sponsorship.
Yeah, it's important I buy more gross vintage t-shirts. That's important.
Yeah, it is gross. It is gross and important.
Okay. So I want to know, I wrote it down. It sounds good, like the way I wrote it down.
Murder on Middle Beach is good. That's another one.
Who is your go-to person in the recovery world? Like your personal spiritual guru? The person that if I ask, well, I'm asking you, but like, who do you recommend to other women and men, to other people?
What do you recommend, Ames?
I don't really like to put anyone on a pedestal. I think I don't really, there isn't a go-to. I have a sponsor and I run things by. I take little bits from different people. I think there's no one that I put up on a pedestal. I think that has it all. I know too much dirt on everybody to do that. And I know how uncomfortable it is to be put on a pedestal also.
Yeah.
And Instagram makes it look like amazing and people think that you have your life together, and it's like I really try and be really like grounded and be like, guys, like, like I don't know if you've had this experience, Laura, but like when people write to me about the book, I'll write back. I don't think Laura writes back, right? You don't write back to DMs from strangers.
No,
right?
I don't check them because
Right.
they make me.
Yeah, she has a bazillion
I feel
more followers.
that. No, it's not that. It's that it's too. I could just spend a lot of time there, and it never doesn't work out well for me.
Okay, so she has better boundaries also. There was times in the beginning where I was, I would be like, guys, come defend me on Instagram and whatever. I was like, should I block this person? I don't know what's, everyone was like, oh, they were like, all like I was the newbie and they were training me. But, people, I'll write back to them and they'll be like, oh my, they'll start crying. Like someone in TLC was like, started literally crying. She was fangirling out so hard. And they're like, I can't believe you wrote me back. You're such an inspiration. I'm like, if you were my good friend, you would know what a lunatic I am. Like I said,
just another noodle.
Put me on a pedestal. I know that people need to be seen. I think it takes a lot of time and courage to reach out to someone. I can't think of all the writers I love. I never took time to go, hey, your book really moved me. Like, so I think it's really incredible that they do that. And so I want them to feel seen, and I want to appreciate that. And also the notes make me cry. It's why I wrote that book, is to help people. So, but I also go, please, like, I'm just like, like a recovering drug addict that wrote a book. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't have it all figured out. So I don't know that I have any gurus really.
Well, I guess I meant Laura.
Except Laura, of course.
Oh, stop. Stop it.
For insight or for motivation or
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
I wouldn't think of her as a sober, mentor, but she is. Pema Chodron is sort of my ground. Like I always seem to mention her first when people are trying to see themselves through a dark period.
Agreed.
I've been listening to her and reading her for a long time now. I find a lot of solace in her. I find a lot of solace in John O'Donohue and David White, Mary Oliver. Those are my go-to people. Amy, you make me sound like such a cold jerk for not answering.
No,
you're like, those people.
I'll be at a place where I can. And believe me, I've gotten lots of psychos. And my roommate was like, get a P.O. box. Like, are you out of your mind? Like, there's some people have really like gotten really creepy and scary. And it was not something, I have terrible boundaries. I'm like, oh, you love me, I love you.
No,
it's like,
yeah, I know. And
it's confusing.
I just want to clarify that, because I think this is important for people to hear in general, is we all have to decide how we use our time. We have a finite amount, right? And this is really a sobriety lesson for me, because I could spend a significant amount of time searching for validation, checking messages, getting caught up in the not nice messages, which there are tons of, and there are also tons.
I don't get those.
Those are also, there's also tons of beautiful ones. So I think for me, this has been, it's not because I don't care. It's not because I don't appreciate, certainly not because I don't appreciate people reaching out, or the fact that people want help or anything. It's got nothing to do with that. I reached a point where I had to say, okay, what is it going to take for you to not quit sobriety, not quit writing, not quit whatever, my life, not quit going. And for me, it was like, I can't, as much as it sucks thinking about leaving people hanging, I can't answer messages most of the time. I just can't. And so I think that's an important message for anybody, because I hear it all the time that, I have to do this and I have to do that. And and I'm a mother, or I'm a father, and I work full time, and my friends are disappointed if I don't do this. And being a servant to all the things that need you, and they have difficulty getting sober or finding peace, any sort of peace in sobriety, because there's nothing left in there. Like the most important thing to protect is your energy and your time.
Yes. No, I got, like I spoke 6 times this week or something, and I was like, okay. And I'm starting to feel really, really, really drained, So it's like, I mean, you know who my person is? This is going to sound so like daddy's girl. Is my dad. My dad is amazing. And my dad beat cancer, and he's cancer free. And my dad knows me better and gives me the best advice. And, he's just like, you're going to get through this, and you're going to help people, and it's going to be great. And it's what you do. And I love you. And I'm so proud of you. But he'll also really be on my ass about like writing, He said, where are the pages? Send me the pages. I want to see some pages. It's 10 minutes a day, an hour a day. The book's not going to write itself, Amy. Let's go. I'm 83 years old. Time's kicking, clock is ticking. Let's go with the series of the book, And I'm like, oh my God. I called him the other day and I said, I haven't called in a couple of days because I haven't been working on the book and I've been afraid. He goes, oh, really? No kidding. Like, I don't know you. I was just like, my dad is the ultimate. And in my book, I talk about him as being sort of this force of nature and sort of, so, I love my dad. and I, almost lost him this year.
Mhm.
So that's
So it's really important. And, the moments that I have with my mom, even though she has dementia, I just, that's really been difficult to sort of show up for someone with no expectations and just be of service. That's also like, it's just like of service, of service, of service. And then you've got to just time, like, that's been the thing for me, for the thing is like, who's feeding me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to comment on something Jen Hare said. She said, I remember the first TLC meeting and you wanting to do it to connect with people. Sounds like it's changed you. In some sense, everything changes us, but it's not that I don't want to connect with people. I do, but that's not, my lesson continues to be in sobriety. What is it? What do I need to bring forth, and what do I have to do to be okay so that I can show up?
Of course.
Right. And I still want to connect with people, and I still do. And yeah, running a new thing has changed me, and it's changed everyone, I think, that's been involved in it. And what people see is not all of what's going on, right? Internally too. And that's a big part of it. I mean, just to say that I don't want to connect with people or whatever because I don't check messages, that's not true. It's just I'm doing what I can to stay afloat and to be able to show up, and that looks different in different seasons. So I still want to connect
make you
with
feel
people.
bad. I'm not. I have.
No,
like,
you're not making me feel
I have
bad.
like
I just want
like a quarter of the followers, and you've been in the limelight way longer. It's like totally different, and I'm super codependent. Like there'll be a time where I won't be able to do that
You didn't
either.
make me feel bad. I was
Okay.
commenting on what Jen said about
Okay, I was just saying, like,
not wanting to, that I used to want to connect with people and now I
No,
don't.
you've
And
been really helpful to me in setting
that's
boundaries.
not
Because
true.
those times she's like, you don't have to respond. I'm like, what?
Well, this is the boundaries
You know?
thing is massive for everybody. Like that.
Yeah, I think we're as alcoholics and addicts, we're terrible at boundaries, right? Because if you tell someone no, they get mad. I don't want people to get mad at me. I'm a people pleaser.
There's so much more other, like you said, people pleaser, but you don't have to be an alcoholic and an addict to be a people pleaser.
True.
Relationships, codependent, even not codependent relationships, it is hard to have boundaries because you don't want to be hurt. And if you have, childhood trauma, abandonment issues, things like that in a close relationship, it can be really hard to be yourself, say what you need, say what you want from the other person, from the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
The fear is not that this person will be mad. The fear is that person will disappear.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's right. Exactly. That they'll disappear. And bad boundaries are the reason, so much of the reason underneath why we start to self-medicate in the first place, right? Because we say yes when we mean no, and we say no when we mean yes, and we do things that are against our own intuition or own integrity. We're saying one thing, doing another. We get resentful, and that requires medication. That requires relief, right? It's painful to live that way. So yeah, we take the alcohol away and we still have our bad boundaries, right? So that it's been, and the thing is with boundaries is that we want to be able to do them and have everyone be okay with them and understand them. And that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
It's just not. So you really have to work against your instinct to people please and to make it okay. But most of the time, people aren't okay at first with your boundaries, and they may never be okay with them because they feel personal.
Yeah.
But they're not.
But yeah, that's been really, really hard. As more things move to Instagram, and even having the podcast, and Joe can be, ooh. I mean, people used to think that I was out of control. And like, they were like, the fact that you're like sort of the pullback police and like, for Joe is so terrifying. Like, I'm like, yeah, he makes me look great though. Like, but, I just like, we let it fly. We are who we are and we're doing what we're doing. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, turn the channel. And it's been really hard to do that and go, it's none of my business if this person doesn't like me, or block or whatever. If someone gets really abusive, blocking them. I mean, it's been been really alert, well, you've helped me a lot with that with Laura, because I've reached out to her and been like, and she's like, you don't have to respond. And I was like,
I know, that's it. Well, that was I've had to learn that too.
Right.
Yeah, I think we all do. I mean, everyone I ever talked about, not everyone I ever talked to, but if I talk to my sponsees, if I talk to my older daughter, if I talk to my younger daughter, my son doesn't ask that kind of advice so much. A lot of times what it comes down to is boundaries.
Yeah.
How to set healthy ones and learning how to set comfortable ones and being okay with making mistakes, about it, and not, if you cross the line, sometimes it's okay to then pull back. I mean, part of the thing that I always think with boundaries is if you don't set it right in the first place between you and another person, then that's it. It's going to get, but no, it's not true. You can always reset.
Yeah.
And to me, the most important thing about maintaining boundaries is consistency. It's like raising children and offering structure. Force it over and over. You can't give mixed messages, and that's difficult. That can be really difficult.
It's really difficult because you have to be able to say, I'm okay with, you have to not just say, but feel that you're okay enough with yourself to withstand the discomfort of a reaction that isn't, that of your boundary maybe not being received well, or for there being confrontation or discomfort. You have to be able to stand enough in yourself to withstand that. And that can be extraordinarily like brutal for people who are codependent, recovering, all of those things. I mean, that is, I think, has been the work. It's all around that, right? Learning how to set boundaries with people. I mean, our relationships are what sort of make or break us in our lives at the end of the day, I think. And surrounding ourselves with people for whom we have mutual respect of each other's boundaries. The thing that changed my mind around boundaries, since we're on this discussion, is that boundaries are actually compassionate. Boundaries make for intimacy, not the other way around. So often we think if I put a boundary around my time or my energy, I'm going to limit intimacy with this person. And that's not the truth. Because the reason it's not the truth is because you're doing that, you're allowing an overstepping of your boundary it's a dishonest act, right? You don't actually want to do that. It's taking a piece of you that you aren't necessarily willing to give. You aren't actually willing to give, but you do it anyway because you feel bad or whatever. And so it's not really teaching the person, it's not allowing them to know who you really are, who you really are. It's showing a version of them that it's trying to manage your reputation, their perception of you. And so you're never really operating eye to eye, heart to heart. It's somewhere here, it's like, please see me this way. And as a people pleaser, you know what that looks like on the inside. You're resentful, you're depressed,
of course, you're
angry, and you have all these thoughts about the other person that are not very kind. And they're, it leads to all these things. And meanwhile, often this person is thinking they're fine with what this arrangement is. And so that's not intimacy. That's something else.
That's my problem in romantic relationships primarily, and my close friendships. And that's something I'm really working on with my coach.
Yeah.
And she said, she had me set some boundaries, literally cried before I set them. I was so freaked out and so frightened about the response from these people. And they were great. But it's like, and I think too, I don't know how you feel, but, writing a book and I don't know, my father's always like, you have to also not care what people think if you're going to be a leader in changing stuff, or, it's like the book, a lot of people didn't like the book. Cool. A lot of people love the book. cool. My father's like, if you're not ruffling feathers, Amy, you're not saying anything new or interesting. So if people are pissed off or upset, fantastic. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think that that's the whole thing. Whenever I say the thing like that I'm thinking that I think is going to be really not like oh my God, sobriety is amazing post, you know, like a really like deep post. That's my very much my secrets. Ooh.
What is that?
What?
There's like a feedback there. It's better. It just stopped.
When I tell my truth, no matter how ugly it is, everyone identifies. You have to say the thing that everyone's thinking that no one dares say. And that has to do with not caring what people think. Because if you care what people think, then you're just pandering. It's just vanity.
Yeah, it's back.
You have to have the balls to say the truth, which is your secrets are not unique.
I don't know. I'll keep myself.
I think though, I do agree. There's something to allowing other people to think what they think, because they're going to think that anyway. But I think this idea that we just end up not caring what people think isn't really true. I don't think we ever really get there. I think we just learn that that people are going to think what they think no matter what, and that it really has nothing to do with us. And that to me is a much more accessible thought than I'm just not going to care what people think. Like, I can't get there a lot of the time. I just can't, because I do care. We are care. We're wired to care, right? And that's part of what boundaries do for us, right? If you're someone who, here's a simple example. Like, if you're trying to create a new thing, or sobriety, let's do sobriety, right? You're trying to get sober. You don't right away probably go out and blast it all over social media. I mean, maybe you do, and that's fine if you're good with that. But you tell your sort of circle of concern first, and you allow this idea, you protect the idea, you protect the thing you're trying to do. And then maybe you extend that part of your identity outward. You start to talk about it in a bigger circle. You maybe then go public with it. But I think the idea that we won't care what people think, like, I really struggle with that. I think it's really hard to not care. I think part of what we're living in right now is that our circle of concern used to be limited to like our family and our communities. And now it's expanded to really the whole world if we want it with social media. And we're not meant to be able to process that, right? So that's why social media boundary is another big thing for me.
That's important. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, that we're not able to process that amount of, the concept that we're within this huge family.
It's not even, it's not even that we can't process it. It's that we're biologically wired to care, because if we shame, real authentic shame, like not the, well, let's just say shame. Okay. It's meant to correct our behavior so that we don't get too weird that we get kicked out of the tribe.
The band, when we were and then we would die and starve to death, like back in the day. So it's like
that's biologically built into our brain for a very long time. That hasn't changed, and yet now we get feedback
on everything.
Right.
What you look like, everything.
Right. And if you choose to be on, there's upsides to it too. I'm not saying it's all bad, but one of, I think the big parts of sobriety for me is like, okay, so who is the circle of your concern? Like, what are you really gonna allow in here? Because it's not that it's like you just get stronger and stronger and then finally strong enough that you really just never care. It's like, we aren't supposed to have that much feedback, period. We can't, it's not even that we can't process it. It's like ruins us. It will distort your image of who you are to such a degree that you stop. Like I said, like going back to like, what do I need to do to not stop?
Well, I learned really early on not to read reviews ever. When the book came out, I never read reviews. I didn't read reviews when I was writing for The Fix. I never read reviews on my articles because I didn't want to be influenced. Because number one, if they loved what I said, then I'm going to pander and give more of that. And if I didn't like it, then I'm going to pull back and not do that.
Right.
And I
It
would be
doesn't.
afraid to speak my truth. So I don't read reviews of the book. I won't read reviews of the second book. Don't read reviews on comments on articles, none of it. Because my father has said that. He's like, it's none of your business, Amy. You know, he said, the good ones are going to make you think you should have won like a Pulitzer Prize, and the bad ones are going to want to make you throw out a window. It doesn't matter.
It's not
the
you.
people who
It's
love
not
you will
both.
find you. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're winding down in time, but I really did want to make time for some question and answers. And a couple were emailed to me, and one of them is, can you discuss replacement addictions and strategies to cope with them? Sober, but now drinking a ton of Diet Coke, candy, cross addictions. That would be whack-a-mole.
Yeah. Thanks.
Wait, I say the question again. I'm sorry.
Oh, a question about strategies to cope with cross addiction.
Oh, I don't think there is such a thing as cross addiction. I think it's all alcoholism and addiction. I think it's just finding different forms to get dopamine and check out of yourself.
Well, I heard you mention that about the dopamine and checking
I
out.
don't believe that. So, because when I got sober, I developed a sex addiction. I was addicted to nicotine. And then the more things that I'm pulling away, the more I'm having to sit with myself. You know what I mean? And it gets really uncomfortable. Like now I'm like, in this weird like withdrawal in terms of like love and sex stuff. And I'm like, like never been so hungry for like attention and validation in my life. So, but I think that for me, I think the thing, you take the most dangerous ones off the table first. Like, let's take death off the table. You know what I mean? So like if you're shooting dope, like let's take death. If you're like, well, I can't stop eating Ruffles, but I just stopped shooting dope. It's like, okay, cool. Like have Ruffles. You know what I mean? Like have your Ruffles and like your vape. Like it's okay. Like that stuff for me over time. I mean, and this is in my book, and my sponsor said to me, you put down a behavior when what it's doing to you is worse than what it's doing for you. And that's been my experience. That's when I put down vaping or sex addiction or whatever. And I think also right now during a period where we have no connection and dopamine so low because of the isolation, you've got to give yourself some grace. A lot of people gained weight. A lot of people relapsed. It's like when you get back out there, you can have a chance to put things down. You know what I mean? But I think that we're always addictive. I'm very, very, very obsessive about things. It's just a matter of where you're going to put that obsessive energy into work or whatever,
Yeah. I love that take.
I'm sorry. Another question was, what's the difference between the TLC meetings and AA meetings or 12-step meetings?
So the TLC, we welcome all paths to recovery. So AA members, Refuge Recovery, SMART. There's no program with TLC. There's no yet. It's really a sobriety community that welcomes anybody on any, in any program or not in a program at all. And so it's different in that way. We don't have steps like AA does. So it's the primary difference is that AA runs on the 12 steps, right? And TLC is open to all paths.
Yeah, wherever you're at, whatever you're struggling with. It's actually really kind of cool. It's a really loving community. It's very different from AA. I'm still in AA, but there are people who are in AA, and there are people who have left AA, and there are people who've never been in AA. And it's like, we do 2 topics a month and 2 speakers a month. And I just find it to be an incredibly loving community. And, there's some freedom that comes with not being AA, like, in terms of like, I don't know, I feel freer and in the,
I love that you and some other people are bringing the concept of recovery and sobriety to a much wider, to a broader community. Because even if you don't identify as an alcoholic or a drug addict, or specifically just the desire to want to feel better and to do better, to feel better because you are doing better, not to feel better, I downed a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
There's no real hierarchy either. There's no dogma because there's no hierarchy of time or, you know what I mean? It's none of that. I don't know. It's incredibly supportive. And it is, like people are saying, you don't have to call yourself an alcoholic. People aren't comfortable with that. It's like,
or you can.
Yeah. It's
right.
very like whatever works for you, we're into it. You know what I mean? So I enjoy that kind of freedom. I really dig it. And I brought in my sponsor who has like 30 bazillion years, and he loved it. And he did a master class and was like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's the most amazing community. And I was like, it's so much love. It's stunning.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that's come about, but it's like, and my meetings, we laugh a lot. I get to be
of course.
Laugh a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important right now.
But it's also not anti-AA. I want to make sure that's known.
Absolutely.
Like there's tons of AA people in there. I think AA is beautiful. And so, yeah.
And I pull most of my speakers from AA. And just tell them, hey, just don't, if you use too much AA language, people who have left are going to be kind of put off, and people who have never been in AA aren't going to know
what you're going to say. Right.
So we don't want it. So just be more general. And I think that's really important, because I think what needs to happen now in the recovery community is inclusivity. And that includes harm reduction. And that includes everything. Too many people are dying. There's too much infighting in the recovery community. Like, it's AA, or it's this, or it's harm reduction, or it's like, why can't we all just get under the same tent, man?
Well, your blog post, Laura, said it's not either or. We have too much of a mentality of either or. I do want to wrap this up. You guys have been so wonderful being here. Is there any, like somebody asked, do you have any predictions?
Well, let me get my crystal ball out and put on my...
In terms of, that, there seems to be a turn where people are drinking less and are looking more for sobriety and looking more to recovery and having maybe a wholeness of life. So in 1 minute or less, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Your predictions for the next 20 years. Thanks. Go.
I think that sobriety's become cool, which is in some ways a really weird and yucky thing, and in other ways is amazing because it's going to help break the stigma.
Awesome.
And I think that it's opened up things, and people are more open to talk about it, and there's mocktail bars, and it's becoming really, it's cool now. Where before, when I got sober, it wasn't cool at all.
Sobriety is...
I think that it's, people are doing it as a healthy lifestyle, and I think that that's great.
Yeah.
So sober curious, you don't have to hit a rock bottom before you get sober. And there's just there's many, many alternative sobriety communities. And I think that's fantastic.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And then I think we're going to see a major, major shift in the way alcohol is viewed in the next 20 years. I think it'll be similar to how tobacco was changed as something that was acceptable anywhere, anytime, no questions asked, encouraged, highly sociable, all of that, to something that isn't really,
Right.
I think that will happen with alcohol in the next 20 years. Yeah.
I agree with you. There's too many studies coming out regarding cancer and that kind of stuff. There's too much harm, and it hasn't been taxed properly. I mean, Joe and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah, there's so many
it's legal, so it's okay. You know what I mean? It's like, no.
At this time, because with marijuana being legal too, that's a whole other can of worms. So Laura, when is your new book coming out?
I don't know yet. I'm writing it. I would imagine in 18 months to a year, but it's another sobriety-ish book. So I never answered that question, but yeah, I'm in the process of selling it right now. So it depends on all those things.
Amy, you're both working on your books. That's wonderful. Amy, you have Rehab Confidential, the podcast
Hmm.
with Joe Schrank. Laura, you have TLC, the Luckiest Club online. You guys can Google that. You can Google Amy. Both their books are wonderful. And this was really a pleasure for me. I had the opportunity to get to know you through your work and then get to have a chance to speak with you. And I know that you've touched a lot of people. There were some beautiful, beautiful chats. And thank you both so much.
Thank you so
having
much for
us.
having us. This was awesome. I
Yeah, it was
appreciate it.
awesome. Thanks.